In fact, let's go over to my colleague Neetu right now. Now, Neetu joins us from Kerala. As we pointed out earlier, the Congress has organized protests across the entire country. Neetu, I believe this protest is taking place outside the LIC office. Now, what the Congress alleges is that as much as 8% of LIC's equity assets under management, amounting to a sum of 74,000 crores, are in Adani companies. Can you tell us more, and can you tell us more about the protests on the ground right now?
We are right outside the LIC office in Pattam in Thiruvananthapuram here. As part of the nationwide protest here, we can see that the Congress has organized a protest march and dharna here. So the Congress workers march to this place here. INTUC workers are also here, and they are holding this dharna outside this LIC office. So their demand is that a joint parliamentary committee should inquire into this. Why was LIC and SBI asked to invest in Adani Group? So these are some of the issues that they are raising, and this is a protest that has been organized by the Congress in the main junction outside the LIC office in Pattam in Thiruvananthapuram. So the protests have just begun. The workers have marched towards this place, and now they are holding the dharna here. Opposition leader V.D. Satishan is expected to inaugurate this dharna organized by the Congress. So across the country, the Congress has been organizing this protest, and this is a protest that is happening outside the LIC office in Pattam in Thiruvananthapuram.
Neetu, can you just tell us a little bit more about the kind of attendance the protest march is seeing? One of the big questions we've been asking is what the resonance of this entire story is on the ground. So could you tell us more?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
I was saying, Neetu, could you tell us more about the kind of membership and attendance the protest is seeing right now? We can see people standing behind you. What do their full numbers look like?
See, there are quite a number of people here at this protest place that has been spanning in this area outside the LIC office, outside their main gate. So we should also understand that the assembly session is ongoing, but even at that time, Congress workers have come out in protest. There are former MLAs here. There are people on the ground. INTUC workers are here as part of this protest. Now, the Congress also has another protest against the state budget, against the petrol diesel cess. So if you consider all that, we can see that there is quite a large number of people that have gathered here for this protest outside the LIC.
Okay, Neetu, thank you for bringing us those details. Neetu pointing out to us protests taking place outside the LIC headquarters in a part of Kerala. The Congress has organized cross-country protests today. This was pre-announced, but what we've also seen take place outside the Gandhi statue is the coming together of a number of different opposition parties. This, however, was pre-announced, that right from the parliament to the streets across the country, the Congress would be holding protests outside both the LIC, that's the Life Insurance Corporation offices, and the State Bank of India branches. Now, in Delhi, the demonstrations are being held by the NSUI Youth Congress outside the SBI office and the LIC office located at the Parliament Police Station. Let's take you through what you can see on your screens right now. On the left side of your screens, the Lok Sabha that has now been adjourned. Lok Sabha Speaker Om Prakash Birla had spoken to the House just a few minutes ago. He'd asked them to maintain calm. He'd asked why opposition members were in the well protesting. That's the left side. On the right side of your screens, you can see Vice President Jagdeep Thankar. He, of course, heads the Rajya Sabha. In his conversation, you can see he too was standing there. He was chiding opposition members. He was appealing to them to allow conversation to take place. In the center of your screens, multiple opposition parties coming together. The TMC and the Congress spearheading these efforts. Remember, two TMC leaders have said they were particularly vociferous about these claims against the Adani companies for weeks before the Hindenburg research report actually came out. Mahua Moitra from the TMC, an MP known to be particularly vocal when she participates in the Lok Sabha, she had pointed out that she'd in fact been making these claims for weeks before the research report came out. Now, the visuals you can see on your screen right now. Earlier we showed you Kerala. These are visuals coming in from Delhi. We just told you, remember, the demonstrations are being held by the NSUI Youth Congress outside SBI and LIC offices across the city today. What they're demanding is, as we've just told you, a discussion around the Hindenburg research report that came out on Jan 24th. Remember, this is a report that claimed that the Adani Group had weak business fundamentals, that they were involved in stock manipulation and accounting fraud, among a list of other such accusations. The report has triggered a sell-off of shares of all Adani Group companies. Today, as we just told you, the markets opened flat a few minutes after. The markets went into red. And we've been reporting similar such stories over the last few days too when it comes to the stock market. Now, this is despite that the government has tried to assure that the fundamentals of the Indian economy remain strong. Investors at least expect that the Adani crisis will continue to cast a shadow on investor sentiment this week in the market also. As you can see, visuals on the ground, I'd just like to point out senior Congress leader Sonia Gandhi had also penned a Indian Express article today. In that Indian Express article, she had railed against, right towards the end of the article, she'd railed against the government. She said even the hard-earned savings of crores of poor and middle-class Indians are being threatened as the government forces trusted public institutions like LIC and SBI to invest in poorly managed companies owned by its chosen friends. So this was a statement she made in her larger editorial that touched on the budget. Now, on the right side of your screens, protests in Mumbai. On the left side of your screens, protests in Delhi. Led by Congress leaders but joined by leaders of other parties too. These protests are demanding a few different things. The first, a joint parliament committee investigation in the parliament. The hope is that such a committee will be able to raise pertinent questions, will be able to focus on the Hindenburg report itself and be able to focus on how much government organizations were possibly exposed to the Adani Group. Remember, that's the big focus or the big question that has been raised. What amount of exposure did government organizations like LIC and like the SBI have to the Adani Group? Experts suggest that as much as 8% of LIC's equity assets, amounting to a gigantic 74,000 crores, were in Adani companies, remember. Again, there have been contradicting reports there because some have suggested that that 74,000 amount is just 2% of LIC's holdings. So there are contradicting reports on what it actually means for the LIC. The SBI too, in a different way, has been highly exposed to the Adani Group. But again, experts differ on whether the number or the percent is actually high and whether or not it should be looked at as high and whether or not it is a cause for concern. Different market leaders have come out in the last few days